Hey everyone, and welcome back to another World of Warcraft video. Today we are going to be rounding up the new information and clarifications that have just came out about this expansion. So we're going to be going through this nice and quick, and then I'm going to round the video off pretty much by giving you an overview of what I think we can expect from the Endgame, your kind of day-to-day gameplay for Battle for Azeroth when it actually comes out. But let's just get right into this video with the War campaign. So in Legion, the dev team had to split themselves between 12 different class campaigns, and we pretty much saw that feature be dropped when Argus hit, and not really added to that much in patch 7.2. So when I was in front of the developers, I thought it would be a good idea to ask about this system, and you know what? It ends up being pretty good news.
It's really about the story of that war, right? Like, it's about what is happening on the Horde side and how they're using the Zandalari forces in order to, bolster up their attack waves in their naval army or their naval ships. Over time, that'll progress over the course of the level up. It'll progress towards the end game as well. So you'll get introduced to the other continent. You'll start sending some scouting reports over and seeing what's on the other side. And honestly, it's a story that we're gonna probably keep telling over the entire expansion.
Yeah, I don't think it's just going to be a really quick hit and go. There'll be parts of it that are part of the level up experience, parts of it that are in an end game. It's what you would expect a war campaign to be, right? Like establish a foothold on the continent and go from there and sort of explore, conquer, take over. And there's a lot of story to tell in the expansion, but I'm sure that this will be a major part of it, and it's going to go throughout patches.
So as you can see, it does seem like this war really is going to continue over the patches, which is something that would line up, pretty well with Blizzard opening up more war fronts over time, which of course is something that they have said is planned. It's rare, actually, that we get a plot thread that is explored in depth for the entirety of an expansion, so you know what? I'm pretty excited to see what will unfold here. Now, much of this expansion is themed around gathering new allies, and it was also confirmed that Mag'har Orcs and Dark Iron Dwarves will be unlocked as the first allied race, and that will be available on launch as a part of the war campaign. Of course, many of us also asked about the Tortola and Volpera. No news on that front, so per Ghosty will have to dream on for a little bit. And then as for the Zandalari and the Kultiran humans, they're going to be unlocked in a sort of situation a little bit like the Nightborn, where we have to earn their trust first, so they will be available post-expansion release, most likely in a patch. Next up, raid content. Not much was covered about raids, but there was some stuff, so let's just blast through it pretty quickly. Raids are broadly following the Legion template, and when asked about a small Trial of Valor sized raid, Ian actually said something interesting. He said that where it makes sense, say finishing off a plot line like the one of Stormheim, that they want to do that, and he'd like to experiment with different raid sizes, and he even mentioned specifically Onyxia. Now, nothing is confirmed there, but I kind of like the idea. I think a single boss raid is great because it avoids the problems of world boss design, yet it still gives you time accessible but challenging content. Still, there's nothing new content-wise in the raid front, but we do have some cool lore. So, Azshara is likely the Gul'dan boss, i.e. the end of the first stack of raids. I do have to wonder if this means she will usher in a new era of tentacle-related trouble before she finally kicks the bucket. But the key takeaway here is that G'huun and Azshara are both gone pretty quickly, and they're the major level up threats that we're dealing with, which pretty much leaves us with N'Zoth and each other. Combined with how we know that the war campaign is going to extend throughout the expansion, I do have to wonder if we will indeed end up raiding each other by the time this expansion ends. Now, G'huun was also mentioned, and they clarified that he is much less powerful than an actual god in terms of the lore, which does make good sense. And it was also confirmed that he is unrelated to Hakkar, which actually did surprise me a little bit, and I do have to wonder if that answer was a little bit of misdirection. But next up, let's talk about island explorations. Overall, I wanted to know what type of rewards we would get and where these would be positioned overall in terms of difficulty. So I asked the developers.
So if there's Gladiator PvP, then no. That's going to be another one of those, because it's such a different experience. I think difficulty is a relative term based off of the group composition you have, how well you know the players around you. Like with Mythic Dungeons, we require 5 people who know what's going on, they know the dungeon, and as you get higher and higher difficulty, you get constrained more on how well you work together and what kinds of how coordinated you are. With Mythic Islands, I think because it's this new advanced NPC, we have to figure out what that means. It could mean that they're a little bit smarter. It could be that they're more tactical around the island and that it's harder to win the race. Could mean that they just like to fight you more. And these are the things that we're looking at right now. We have a lot of knobs, thanks
Yeah.
to engineering.
No, that's absolutely true. It's a difficulty level with islands is hard to get right, because
Difficult to get right.
it's difficult to get right,
if you will.
if you will. Yeah. I mean, it's because it is a different experience every time, and that's the goal. That's what we're trying to sell. So balancing something that isn't deterministic is always a little bit tricky. But I think in broad strokes, we're looking at for it to mirror in a lot of ways what the dungeon experience would be like. The difficulty you would feel in a normal mode dungeon versus a mythic dungeon would sort of be similar to how we would want to do islands.
With islands themselves, like the different advanced NPCs, the different types of creatures that you show up are almost affixes on their own, right? Like you're going to see the group that is much more in your face, and this island's going to play out because they're always attacking you. They're always making plays for your Azerite as opposed to finding the other ones. So in a lot of ways, like you'll see that difficulty and how you deal with the island will be driven from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's some that are sneakier. They each have their own personality, which is something we really tried hard to work on.
The main reward from that, and what we're the whole story of Battle for Azeroth is this clash over Azerite, right? It's the race to get Azerite, and the reason you're on the island is Azerite. So we're looking at it as the primary reward mechanism being that Azerite. Like this is a great way to power up your neck. These islands are sources of Azerite, so getting that artifact power to level up your Heart of Azeroth really sings out. That can't be all of it, and we're still working on what those other things are, and knowing how different ecologies you're going to see, different locations you're going to see. There's you can be pretty sure that there's going to be some things that pop up that can be added to other parts of our systems that you can collect. So
to elaborate on the non-Azerite reward section then, this does mean that collection type items such as pets and mounts and achievements can be coming from islands, as well as some narrative quests that I assume will be used to world build, with the devs even teasing that we might even get some black dragons being involved. Overall, I think this is pretty damn great. From playing the alpha, I love the gameplay of island exploration, so the longer that they last, the better. Now, in terms of them lasting, well, the team talking about affixes was kind of interesting. It absolutely is true that the enemy teams that you fight do kind of feel like different affixes. I suppose for me, I just wonder how much that will scale up over time, and if an experienced team of maybe heroic gear raiders would ever feel a threat on mythic difficulty island explorations. So maybe it's okay if you can outgear the creatures in the island, but maybe if the enemy's team power is to scale with you, then that would preserve the difficulty. Again, it's tricky, and as Patrick and Matt said, this is all just going to come down to testing. Now, the team did confirm 6 islands and 6 enemy teams, and we know that this is a feature that they plan to support for the duration of Battle for Azeroth. Next up, time to talk about Azerite. So I made my Azerite video before the PAX interviews, and it has since been confirmed that yes, you can respec your Azerite gear. I really wish the team would have just put this information out directly in a forum post, as it would have made it a lot easier for everyone to be on the same page and give more useful feedback. Still though, we have covered Azerite overall, but in short, leveling traits are going to be a bit more simple and generic, but as your Azerite gear gets more powerful, as an example raid gear, you will be seeing more specific traits, as well as traits that are themed after, as an example, the raid that the Azerite gear came from. So if you, say, get some Azerite gear in Uldir, it could have traits which, follow Uldir. Now, they did say that we will not have a massive number increase like with artifact power, and when I asked about infinite traits and progression, this is what Matt and Patrick had to say.
So there's 2 pieces to it. One is the way the system works. Higher item level gear will have powers that require more Azerite. So you almost always have something that you're looking forward to if you're within the tier that you're playing in. The second piece is that as your heart receives Azerite, it actually levels up itself. So it gets more and more powerful, and its item level goes up with Azerite. Maybe in the future we'll see other things in future patches. I think this is a system like we loved what artifact power did for in Legion as being a constant reward. It's something I can look forward to. Yeah. So something we're looking at.
Yeah. One of the lessons I think from there was like, okay, if I'm a mage, I'm a fire one, my frost one, and I have to level them independently. But with the Heart of Azeroth, you actually have it all just going into one item, which is great, and it affects the other things that you acquire, which is great.
And then further to that on the topic of Azerite, Azerite is going to have a weekly cap, though one presumes that there's going to be some sort of diminishing return, so you can't just grind it off forever. Then to round off Azerite gear, one thing that many people were concerned about was that, well, raid gear would no longer be special in comparison to other sources because sets are gone. Well, they did clarify that the raid gear, like, it'll be the best PvE stuff in the game. Why is that? Well, raids are going to have specific Azerite traits that will fill the role of tier sets in terms of their significance to class design, and the same, of course, goes for trinkets as well, which are going to continue to be a pretty major source of gameplay in this expansion. Next up, though, let's talk about Mythic Plus, which of course is our latest endgame pillar to World of Warcraft. There isn't really much to report on the system as the devs overall are happy on it, but we do have a little bit of info. First, some quality of life. They are going to let us filter the group finder by keystone level, which is just lovely. They're also considering adding a ahead of the curve achievement for each Mythic Plus season, like so getting a plus 15. Bar that, though, we are mainly seeing tweaks. They did mention that Tyrannical and Fortified could be level 2 affixes, and from what I understand, this is because they want to spread the difficulty out a little bit more to make it sort of less spiky. Then the overall rewards are very much going to be Legion-like, so you'll be seeing familiar things such as your weekly chest returning in Battle for Azeroth. Next, let's quickly mention some customization. So on the alpha, we just saw Golden Blood Elves be added, and with that in mind, I asked them about additional customization options for the existing races.
I will say, yeah, we talk about character customization all the time. We think it's
Always looking at ways to improve.
always looking at ways, and I think we have. I always like to say we have like this giant list of things that we'd love to get at some point, and we in a lot of ways the expansion is what determines what we pull off that list. And I think character customization we talk about it every single expansion as something we want to do. Again, nothing yet, but Allied Races is kind of the first step towards a customization where we kind of give you these big chunks of new races that you can identify with.
So normally that wouldn't mean much, but again, we just saw the Blood Elf edition, so it does kind of indicate that the team are making pretty legitimate steps towards giving us more customization options. Again, though, we just need to wait and see. And we're going to round this section of the video off with a quick fire of just some interesting nuggets of information. So, Weather 2.0, this system was mentioned. It's something I'm going to be investigating on the alpha, but in short, anything that brings a bit more immersion and a bit more ambience to the world, I think that's a pretty damn good thing. Also, Paragon chests were brought up. They are going to continue. However, annoyingly low drop rate mounts are not going to be a part of them. They also said that there are currently no plans for a Mage Tower-like feature, but there are some cool ideas floating around for the Brawlers Guild. Then also on the topic of legendaries, one-off ones in the traditional sense are still a possibility for Battle for Azeroth, and hopping over to World Quests, the minigame style ones like the Kirin Tor are also planned. Then hidden mounts and secrets are going to live on in Battle for Azeroth given their success in Legion, and then for Teldrassil and Lordaeron, they're going to have a pretty cool 2.5D cinematic, which I actually think that going sort of super stylized in that could really just show kind of how gratuitous the start of this expansion could actually be. You know, which is important because we want that to really be impactful and emotive because, yeah, it's what gets both sides thinking that the other one is the enemy. But let's talk about the end game at a glance. I just kind of want to give you an overview of what to expect. So, players who are into raiding, Mythic Plus and rated PvP, I think you're largely going to be doing a lot of the same activities that you currently do. However, on top of that, you'll be progressing through the war campaign. Now, if you recall how Patrick ended his answer, I don't think that's going to be a bit of content that you're just going to blast through at the very start. It seems like it'll be a continuous thing. I kind of see it maybe as being a mixture of the Order Hall campaign and the 7.1 Suramar storyline. So, unlike with those parts of Legion, the good thing is the war campaign. It's a single cohesive story. I think that could be a lot more effective in terms of the storytelling. Then on top of that, of course, you'll be squeezing in island explorations here and there to get Azerite. Then I think if you're a collector, you'll really be doing a lot of island explorations in the hopes of getting mounts, pets, and other rewards. Thankfully, though, they do feel very replayable, so that shouldn't actually be too bad. Then as for Warfronts, well, they're probably cyclical, so you'll be dropping into the queued Warfronts around every week, and then doing whatever content is in the Warfront zone in the periods where your faction controls them. Then I think if your player is interested in PvP, as we recently covered, rather than grinding out strong boxes, you'll be able to fill up the Conquest bar each week for a guaranteed bit of gear. As a casual PvPer, that just seems like a nice little thing I could do every week, so I'm definitely excited about that. Then, instead of worrying about getting legendaries, you're going to be targeting specific bits of Azerite gear from drop sources that are known to you, which to me sounds a lot better than the Legion system. All in all, it's quite similar to Legion with the core setup, but there's a lot more content to do for players who maybe just want to solo queue or be able to hop on, do some meaningful content, maybe if they've got 30 minutes free. Unlike Legion, Azerite gear is a known predictable drop. I think that removes a lot of the frustration that happened with the Legion expansion. So on paper, to me, it seems like it is, Legion was an experiment, a kind of a beta, and then this is the first expansion that is being done with the ability to use the successes of Legion as a template. That said, the devil is in the detail, and coming up with a cool idea and pitching it, that's a hell of a lot easier than actually executing it. So we will have to see how this all turns out. But there you go. That is a whole bunch of clarifications from the Blizzard press event that I went to, plus the stuff that went down at PAX a few days later. And just a general update on the expansion and what's going on. I think the first thing I'm going to do is probably try to find out more about this Weather 2.0 system and if it's actually fully implemented, because I'd be kind of interested to see what that looks like. Anyway, thank you very much for watching this video, and a special thank you to everyone over on Patreon who really help make this whole thing possible. So, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next time.